My clock says 11:59, so good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, almost afternoon. We're here today, I have just emailed you the city's proposal on Article 33, Emergency Medical Services. This is in response to the association proposal of November 3rd, 2015 at 9 a.m. Before I go into this proposal, I'd like to say a few things. We've heard everything that you've said and that we've taken into consideration your reasonings for your proposal and the goals that you've established. And I think we have mutual goals in trying to come to a solution to this particular issue. One of them, we want to incentivize ambulance duty. We both understand that it's a large majority of the responses that are received by the Corpus Christi Fire Department. Number two, we want to incentivize promotions up the ranks from firefighter 1s into firefighter 2, EMS, and then up the chain, firefighter 2 engineer, captains, etc. Number three, we're also both in accord that, in order for this operation to work properly and efficiently and at the caliber that it has been operating, that it must be adequately staffed. And that the management must have the ability to adequately make assignments and staff the necessary parts of the operation, and specifically ambulances. Number four, I think we're all also in agreement that we want our firefighters to be effective. I mean, that's reflective of the service that we provide to the community and the service that our firefighters do for our community. And number five, I think we're looking for a solution in this contract that is mutually beneficial to the City of Corpus Christi, the management, and the firefighters and the fire union. We want to fix a problem so that in a time of crisis, worst case scenario, everybody's on the same page about how things need to happen and how it will happen, and how it will happen in a way that doesn't punish anybody, whether it be a firefighter who has to ride too much, or the city who can't put a firefighter in a certain position that needs to be staffed. So I think we have mutual goals, and we're both trying to come up with a solution. We have different roads, and we're trying to find a place where those roads meet. And we have taken into consideration your last proposal and have worked off of that. And we have heard your concerns about firefighter 2 EMS being in that position for a length of time, etc. Your concerns about burnout, PTSD, and firefighter effectiveness. Taking all that into consideration, including mutual goals, and the duties and responsibilities that the management must undertake in order to protect the firefighters and the operations that we provide to our taxpayers, we have and the community, we have come up with this proposal. I'd like to point out that for the first time, the city is putting down a proposal that for firefighter 2 EMS has an election to get off ambulance rotation except for 4 specific circumstances, which are staffing shortages, increased operational needs, extreme conditions, and emergencies. These are the 4 conditions that have been reflective throughout the moratoriums we've talked about, and the situations where the city will need to adequately staff its operations. So what we have done here is on Section 1 certification requirements. Section A, there's 3 categories. The first one being firefighters hired on or before May 31st, 1985. This particular category doesn't have many firefighters in this particular category, but we're gonna leave it as it is. It allows for a voluntary demotion and to drop a paramedic patch after, I think after 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in agreement with that particular section. Where things have changed is on section 1B. And what we have done is we have consolidated a couple of categories here, and that being firefighters hired between June 1st, 1985 as September 30th, 2006. Number one under B is that I think we're all in agreement. It's kind of the same thing that we had in the old contract. Paramedic certification must be acquired within 18 months of the date of employment. If it cannot be obtained within the 18 months, it should constitute grounds for discharge. I believe most people in this category have already undergone this particular provision, and it really won't affect much change. Number two for this section of firefighters still leaves that minimum of 8 full years to maintain a paramedic certification as a condition of employment. And it also offers the ability for a firefighter who loses a paramedic certification some time in order to try to regain that certification. Number three is where we distinguish the differences between a couple of the groups that I had consolidated. The difference being that firefighters who have maintained a paramedic certification for a minimum of 8 full years and were hired prior to January 1st, 2006 are not required to maintain any kind of paramedic or EMT certification thereafter. The second group were firefighters who have maintained paramedic certification for a minimum of 8 full years and were hired after December 31st, 2005. They must maintain the certification at least at the level of EMT-B or higher during the entirety of their tenure at the department. Failure to do so would result in discharge. Number four, that language is agreed to in this context with regard to recertification, or if a firefighter 2 elects to drop their paramedic patch after 8 years, they're involuntarily demoted to firefighter 1, etc., but they maintain seniority.
I'm sorry, where are you looking right now?
That's number section 1B4.
Okay.
It's the language in green.
Right.
Number 5 states all firefighters in the rank of firefighter 1 and firefighter 2 EMS will be required to participate in ambulance rotation as a condition of employment if they are certified paramedics, and they currently are participating in ambulance rotations on the effective date of this agreement. And it says that because there are some firefighters who have taken elections of either dropping the patch, voluntary demotion, or have gotten off the ambulance rotation, and we're not requiring them to come back. We're just grandfathering them in. If they've done that already, they're going to be left alone.
So looking at paragraph number 5, it says will result in discharge. I assume that they would have appeal rights still, civil service appeal rights.
Let's see. Absent exigent circumstances. The next sentence was absent exigent circumstances, and that being, military leave, line of duty leave, etc., things like that. That would
injury.
Something that's out of everybody's control.
Right.
Failure of these firefighters to participate in the ambulance rotation without the available exceptions provided for in this agreement will result in discharge.
Right. And that's my question. Could they appeal?
I don't think that this would deny the right of appeal in terms of what happens, but in terms of the discharge. But this sets forth that this is what the disciplinary action will be in this circumstance. But I don't see, there was nothing in here that says, because there may be, maybe there is an exigent circumstance that would apply in this particular case. And that would be something subject for appeal.
You know, I mean, there's, the reason I think we had discipline up to and including, I mean, it may be that, they, you know, didn't have, you know, a good reason, where they just, you know, didn't do it one day or something like that, and then started doing it again. And then as I read this, you still have to fire them. You can't just like give them 5 days off or whatever.
Can you give me an example of what you're talking about? You're saying one day, you're meaning that they didn't write it for one particular day?
Yeah, you know, he didn't have any exception, but you know, he, you know, refused to write it a single day. And then the next day, he rethought it, and he said, you know, I just went off my rocker, you know, something like that. So they clearly violated the provision, but it's not the kind of thing where, you know, I mean, you're taking away discretion from your fire chief in that situation. And, you know, so that's what I'm thinking of, but. Okay, keep going.
Okay. On number 6, this is commencing September 1st, 2017. Only firefighter ones who have maintained paramedic certification for 16 years and have cumulatively participated in ambulance rotations for 16 years may request in writing to be removed from the ambulance rotation and to only be assigned to ambulances only during extreme conditions, staffing shortages, increased operational needs, or emergencies as determined by the chief and or the city. The granting of this request is at the sole discretion of the fire chief. If the request is granted, the callback, and when I say callback in this context, it doesn't indicate automatic overtime. There may be another phrase we can use to reference this. But the callback to ambulance duty for extreme conditions, staffing shortages, increased operational needs, or emergencies is at the chief's discretion and not grievable. The fire chief may also deny such requests under Section 5 of this article, which is the moratorium, and we'll go through that at the end.
Okay.
Before I talk about this, I'm gonna read the next section, which is 7, which applies to firefighter 2 EMS, and then I'm gonna discuss them together because they kind of do go hand in hand as to the reasoning why it's set up this way. In addition to the temporary reassignment available to firefighter 2 EMS under Section 4 of this article, commencing on September 1st, 2017, a firefighter 2 EMS who has been in the firefighter 2 EMS rank for at least 13 years and has cumulatively participated in ambulance rotations for 13 years in rank may request in writing to voluntarily demote to firefighter 1 and will be assigned to ambulances only during extreme conditions, staffing shortages, increased operational needs, or emergencies as determined by the chief and or the city. If a firefighter 2 EMS is elected to voluntarily demote, call back to ambulance duty for extreme conditions, staffing shortages, increased operational needs, or emergencies is at the chief's discretion and not grievable. The fire chief may deny such requests as allowed by Section 5 of this article, which is also that moratorium. Now, the way it's set up, currently, we have some, the way it has developed into what the current situation is has resulted in several different kinds of operational problems. And the current situation is that firefighter 1s who have, they ride the ambulance and they provide relief to firefighter 2s who ride the ambulance as part of their job duty. They promote up to ride the ambulance, make more money, etc. Firefighter 1s are used to relieve firefighter 2s when necessary, when they're riding too much, when there's people calling sick, there's a shortage of firefighter 2s. They use firefighter 1s as relief. Currently, a firefighter 1 who's fulfilled 8 years pursuant to that settlement agreement is able to elect to get off the ambulance and really suffers no economic loss other than whatever the ambulance duty pay is right now. So there really is no incentive for this firefighter to promote up to a firefighter 2 position because we have the Pulido arbitration. A firefighter 2 now promotes up and will ride the ambulance forever unless they drop their patch. And that's really difficult because we work really hard. You work really hard for that patch, and it's a good thing for both the firefighter and the department, the operations, and the community that they're serving. But currently that's their only way out, to demote down to a firefighter 1, and there's huge economic impacts on that as well. You know, I don't know, it's probably an estimate of, you know, $300 to $500 a month, is what I'm guessing, based on what the numbers are.
Closer to the latter.
To probably 500, then we'll say about an average of $500 a month. So what we are looking at is okay, and we have a staffing shortage. So what's happening is the pool that we have from the firefighter 1s, in order to try and alleviate and relieve the firefighter 2s who have no other option than to drop their patch, that gets smaller. Firefighter 2s are working and keep, you know, being rotated more often. So what we're asking for with this particular category is, let's switch it. Let's switch the Pulido arbitration award for the firefighter 1 settlement agreement, switch it, and it benefits both parties. That being, firefighter 1s are gonna have to ride the ambulance. They're gonna have to provide the relief, you know, if they're called to do so. If they want a way to elect off the ambulance duty, it incentivizes them to promote up to a firefighter 2. That way we have now openings on firefighter 1 levels to fill with cadets. And then we incentivize the promotion of firefighter 1s to firefighter 2s, and hopefully get that quicker. So then once a firefighter 2 gets in there, they have to ride the ambulance for a certain amount of time, but they can elect off ambulance rotation. The only time that they can, and that election is mandatory. If the firefighter 2 says, I want to elect off the rotation, the chief has to say yes. Firefighter 1 has that option after a certain amount of time, but it's at the discretion of the fire chief if he feels that we're staffed properly at the time, etc. And this is outside the moratorium. So a firefighter 2 now has an election off the ambulance, but yet can still be used, you know, used only during those 4 categories: staffing shortage, increased operational needs, extreme conditions, and emergencies. And we're talking about staffing shortages. We're talking about a situation where we haven't had a class in several years, and it has kind of rippled into where we're at right now. And also, you know, when I'm talking about increased operational needs, we're talking about you know, a move up in the number of responses that are coming in, the opening of a new fire station, the addition of new apparatuses, whether it be fire trucks or ambulances, etc. So what we're doing is, in that category, requesting that we basically switch. And as an incentive for a firefighter 2, they're still able, a firefighter 2 EMS are still able to maintain that EMS patch, or the paramedic patch, excuse me, and they're still able to get off ambulance rotation. They can volunteer if they want, so they don't lose all that, you know, as much money as they would if they were forced to drop their patch and involuntarily demote. The next category, which is now section C, are firefighters hired on or after October 1st, 2006.
And why did y'all select 2006 as the new demarcation line?
Well, and let me tell you what the main difference is here, and I'll explain that in my explanation. The second category has the same kind of mechanism for the firefighter 1 and firefighter 2. I'm not going to go through it because it's almost exactly the same, except for the term that they have to serve on the ambulance. Basically, a firefighter 1 has a request that's at the discretion of the chief, but a firefighter 2 EMS has an election. Looking at it, and I want you to understand that there was a lot of thought, a lot of analysis, and a lot of thought and analysis that went into putting this particular proposal together. One of the reasons we picked 2006 is because we looked at the current firefighters that serve as a firefighter 2 EMS, and how many were already at their 8 years or more that could drop their patch. And that would capture This captures those people. The difference with this particular category is that firefighters are going to be required to maintain their patch, paramedic patch, as a condition of employment. We're asking for this in exchange for the election of a firefighter to EMS to be able to get off the ambulance without having to drop their patch. It's another incentive. It benefits the firefighter economically. They still receive the paramedic certification pay. They're still qualified to ride the ambulance if they want to volunteer, or if they, and et cetera. They can always come back. And it's the same circumstances that if we're in a crisis under those four conditions, or those four conditions exist, the fire chief is able to call, at least utilize them in order to alleviate that condition at the time, and then let them go back to non-rotation when it's that condition no longer exists.
Now, I assume that there are some people within this group after 2006. Are there any that have already done their 8 years and are eligible under the current contract right now to drop their patch?
Let me see. On the 2006,
They would, I guess, at the most, this would only cover 9 years, so I wouldn't think there would be too many.
no, I don't think, let's see. It may literally be a few, 1 or 2 firefighters. Because currently we have 42 firefighter to EMS with more than 8 years, with 8 years or more that can drop their patch, and that would be hired 2007 and before. So people hired in before 2006 are very few, because we did not have a class in 2006. So so I'm understanding that the premise is that those 42 would be captured in section B.
Okay. And so, Roxy, I think a lot of our people are gonna be looking at the tape of your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many people have been hired in the fire department after 2006?
If you give me a moment, let me get my notes. I'll give you the numbers since 2006, and I'll just go down the list.
Okay.
In 2006, we did not have a class. We had 0.
Okay.
In 2007, we
Mhm.
hired 23 cadets.
Okay.
In 2008, we hired 17 cadets.
Okay.
In 2009, we hired 18.
18?
Yes.
Okay. Then none in 2010?
0 2010, 0 2011, and 0 in 2012. 2013, we hired 31. 2014, there were 0 cadets. 2015, we hired 40 cadets.
We hired them or they're in the academy.
I'll go into that right now. But
It's
we're
my
hired-
understanding
40. And in
that of the 40, that I think most of them have finished the cadet class. I think something like 36 of them are in paramedic training.
Yeah,
So they're still
cadets.
not in the stations, but I think 4 are in the stations.
That's right. And I'll go into what we currently have right now. But before we finish this list, in addition to those classes, we had 6 alternative hires in October of 2013. And so you have that information. I think what would be important also is what we're currently working with.
Do you know, of this group, I'm just adding the hires between 2007 and 2013, and there's 99 of them.
I don't have that number. It's 129, including the 40 from 2015. So let me see.
Only maybe, oh wait, 40, 53, 83, 84. 84 hire between, did I do that right?
No, 89, I think.
89, okay.
The total of all of the years 2006 to 2015 is 129. If you take away the 40 cadets in 2015, that would be 89.
Okay. So those 89 people that only have an 8-year certification requirement now and that would be changed that for life, just explain why you think they would want to accept this.
Well,
I
of
mean,
the how
what,
many? Excuse me?
the 89.
The 89.
Yeah.
Well, a lot
I
of
mean,
those.
that's the people that we're kind of changing the rules in the middle of the game on.
Okay, and I don't have some of the numbers, but if we're looking at the 89, some of those 89 are
Firefighter 1.
firefighter 1s, firefighter 2s, but we also have to remember that there's other ranks that those are also filled with. I know there's captains that fall into that category, and I'm not quite sure if there's any battalion chiefs.
I
for that
doubt
category.
that are there any captains hired after 2007?
Yes.
They're moving up the ladder
Yeah.
pretty
There's gonna
quick.
be one battalion chief.
Yeah, so we have to take into consideration that there are some people that have dropped their paramedic certification or have chose to maintain it, et cetera.
Well,
but they're not riding the ambulance at this point.
This group since they've been hired since 2007, just by math, we know that they would only now be on the cusp of being able to drop. So I assume that all of them still have their paramedic patch. But,
Well, the reason for dropping the paramedic patch has really been to get off of the ambulance duty. That's the only way out currently for a firefighter 2 EMS. So the incentive in keeping that paramedic patch is that you maintain that paramedic certification, even if you don't ride the ambulance. But as a firefighter 2, we're giving you the incentive, okay, you're gonna keep that patch, but we're guaranteeing you an election to get out of the ambulance rotation other than those 4 conditions that should not be exercised indiscriminately, okay?
right.
So that's the incentive. It's an incentive economically. It's an incentive because that paramedic patch is valuable outside of this fire department as well. A lot of firefighters do have, other outside work that they do, and if they maintain their paramedic patch, that is of value to them even outside of the fire department.
So you're saying that some of this group of 89 you think does medical work outside of the fire
Possibly,
department?
I don't know, but I do know of some circumstances where that may happen.
Okay.
Maybe working at an emergency clinic.
But if
or
I'm
something where a
understanding
paramedic
but
patch will give them some more money, et cetera.
if I'm understanding the proposal, they would no longer have the option to drop certification after 8 years, but they could voluntarily demote after 20 years in rank as a firefighter 2 EMS.
Yes, and I'll tell you, I'm looking at the numbers, the terms are something we can talk about, okay?
But right now, as the proposal stands,
Right now as a proposal
if we assume the
stands-
average firefighter doesn't promote for the first 4 years of their career, it's really 24, 25 years before they would have the right to voluntarily demote under the current proposal.
Yeah, okay, you're thinking of right
Well,
now
4
as
years
it's
as a
written.
firefighter 1 and 20 years as a firefighter 2 EMS.
Right, and what we're trying to do is incentivize the promotional average to happen a lot sooner. We're trying to incentivize a firefighter 1.
So firefighter-
Right at 2 years when they're able to take that test to study and promote up, because that will lower the amount of years that they have to serve on the ambulance. Ideally, just, if a firefighter 1 were to promote right at 2 years, take the test when the firefighter's first eligible to take the test and get up to a firefighter 2, and get in their 16 years, that would be 18 years. And
Yeah.
I'm just saying what we're trying to work towards. I
Right,
know that
I
we're
know.
talking about averages, et cetera, but I'm talking about, let's incentivize people promoting up, even promoting up from firefighter 2 EMS up to a captain, to battalion chief, et cetera. So I want to incentivize the promotions, incentivize keeping the paramedic patch, incentivize riding the ambulance, because now we have agreed on one part of the economics to a tiered system on shift pay for ambulance duty. Make sure everything's adequately staffed so that firefighter 2 EMS ride the ambulance less, and we can rotate that.
Johnny just asked me a question, when you're saying cumulatively participated, does that include their time as a firefighter 1?
No, right now as it stands, because the cumulatively riding the ambulance is the same number of years as what is required in rank. And we can talk about that as well.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
reason
I
I say I have that in there is because, there may be some random circumstance where a firefighter 2 EMS gets called out, let's say for military duty, something outside of our control. And something happens where he maintains his paramedic certification, but he's still a firefighter 2 EMS, but he's out on military leave for 16 years, and he comes right back and says, okay, I've been a firefighter 2 EMS for 16 years, I'm opting out. That's not fair to the firefighter 2s who have served and ridden on the ambulance. So it's kind of to prevent things like that, to make sure that the ambulance rotation is done by all firefighters, and so there's not kind of a little loophole kind of like that.
Injury leave?
Yeah, and injury leave also. We can make, we're willing to listen if there's anything with regard to injury leave, but it's in there in order to close any kind of loophole that would let somebody be in a rank for that long but not participate in the ambulance rotation.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions on
I don't think so.
that section? Let me talk a little bit about, because it's consistent through those two sections, B and C, on those 4 conditions that we're talking about. And I'm just going to refer to them as 4 conditions because I don't want to, it's very wordy to be repeating it over and
That's
over.
okay.
As we have it, if you've voluntarily demoted or you have been granted a request by the chief, we have kind of a little safety net that will help us adequately staff our operation, and it's under those 4 conditions, and we have it at the chiefs and the city's declaration, or at their discretion,
Sole
and it's not grievable. This is the reason. Let me explain to you the reasoning behind it. It's not a gotcha or anything like that. I'll give you one clear example that I get concerned about. We all know that staffing has been an issue on this table previously in other negotiations, and we talked about it a little bit during this particular round of negotiations, et cetera. And as we both understand, as we agreed, staffing is off the table and management is not interested in doing that, we believe it's a management right that we hold and that we can determine based on budget, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that, why this is not why I put that it's not grievable, or why we're proposing it's not grievable and it's our discretion, is because we don't want a grievance, you know, the fire chief or the city to say, oh my goodness, we have a staffing shortage, you need to either declare a moratorium or call these people back before you call the moratorium, et cetera. And then we get a grievance. And the grievance is there a staffing shortage? And then lo and behold, we have an arbitration, 1710 pops up, you know, the union's telling us what an adequate staff should look like. We're saying, no, this is what we determine. And then indirectly, even though we know that it was not part of the agreement, indirectly, this little issue comes in and is now interpreted to mean that we're required to staff at a certain level because of that particular grievance. I want to prevent that from happening, because we're all clear here at the table that on where we are at staffing, but when we're administering this contract, whether it be next year, 5 years down the road, you know, whether, we don't know how long this provision will stay in a contract. I mean, that's pursuant to future negotiations. I want it to be clear what that really meant. And I understand that the chief and the city don't want to do this arbitrarily. We need to be reasonable, and that's the intent. We need to be reasonable and do this in good faith, but we don't want to be held into some indirect interpretation that would require us to give up some sort of management right that we're not willing to give up at this, you know, during this contract. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying. You know, I think that it is flawed reasoning, and it's because it overlooks something. It's like, you know, firefighters, you're trying to require us to do this, and what you're ignoring is really the nature of the job. If you look at standalone EMS departments, the career average for people in those departments is much less than 20 years. I'm going to get you some examples between now and our next meeting. People don't last that long, so you're building in a requirement of 20 plus years to have these people staffing the ambulance. And what your proposal ignores, I think, is the fact that you won't be able to keep those people. I mean, people will leave the department as they do standalone EMS departments. People will burn out and be less effective. And so you're looking at this as, you know, union, you're telling us what to do. And no, union's trying to save you from shooting yourself in the foot. And I understand that y'all don't agree and accept that premise, but you're ignoring the fundamental nature and possibly just not understanding the fundamental nature of EMS work. And I think this is emanating from, you know, people that really don't understand what EMS is and how it's done. And you're creating rules that, if we accepted them, would exist in this department and this department alone. I can guarantee you that you're not going to find another department in the state that requires people to ride the ambulance for 20 years. And, you know, if you can find one, point it out to me and do it on tape, so I'll be rightfully embarrassed. But, you know, I mean, we've agreed not to talk about staffing, you know, and not to tell y'all how to staff. But, I mean, your own statistics, I mean, you only hired in 1 out of 5 years. And that created a crisis, you know?
Right. Well,
and I'm not saying you didn't have legitimate reasons for making the decisions that you made. You know, we're not trying to tell you how to staff. We're just trying to protect our people.
right. Well, and we're trying to protect the firefighters as well as the operations and the services that we provide. And that staffing crisis was not just because we didn't hire cadets, so it was exaggerated by the ability of people to opt out of ambulance duty and or voluntarily demote, because then we had a smaller pool to pull from in order to alleviate, anybody who was riding the ambulance,
I
more than
hear
they
you.
should.
The fly in your
So-
ointment is that,
And,
you had those same rules before 2010, and they were never a problem.
well, and in addition to that, I think you've agreed that, you may not find these rules that we're proposing in other departments in Texas, but it's clear that the ranking system and the system that we have here for operations is unique to Corpus Christi. So in that uniqueness, there are going to be different unique rules that don't apply across the board. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to fix the issue that we have here. Fortunately, we had good case, not best case scenario, but we had a good case scenario throughout the contract. And then when it hit worst case scenario, when we hit a crisis mode, the contract just really didn't work for either party, and we're trying to fix that. We're trying to do that. When we come up with an issue like, with a staffing shortage, or we add more fire stations and fire ambulances, et cetera, we need the ability to have flexibility to grow and say, hey, okay, I know that we took you off the ambulance, but we need you just for this time so that we can staff it up, or figure out the budget, or figure out what we need to do to alleviate the situation. So what we're trying to do is provide a mechanism that will help a transition have a transition into figuring out what the issue is, figuring out a solution to the problem when it arises. And so we think that we have provided you, number one, with what y'all wanted, a firefighter 2 EMS is a way out, but with the ability for us, but not tying our hands in being able to staff our ambulances, and incentives to keep a paramedic license or certification, and to ride the ambulance, et cetera.
Okay.
And we didn't ignore the fact that we're retaining, that we may lose some of these people. We know that. And I've said here at the table, these are the terms that we've looked at, and this is what's gonna work for us. If the term is something that we need to talk about, let's talk. We're willing to talk about that.
Okay.
We just haven't gone down that road. So I invite you to work off of our proposal. We've worked very, very hard on it. We've come a long way.
Yeah, I'm not
Right.
denigrating in any way.
And I'm just
Either of those
reiterating
things,
it.
that you have worked hard and that you have made a significant.
Right, and I'm just reiterating it because I would really like to see where we can go. I think we're almost there.
I'm not as optimistic as you are, but let's continue on with the proposal.
Okay.
I understand section 1. There's a couple of things we probably ought to talk about, section 3 and section 5, the moratorium. In section 3, you've added the rank shall be a battalion chief with the rights and benefits of a battalion chief. Is that a change? I'm looking at section 3 on system EMS.
Section
director.
3, actually, no, that is language pulled from the old contract.
Okay, does that capture something that's not captured by pay and privilege of the appropriate seniority step of the battalion chief rank?
Yes, it does. That's why there's the deletion of that last sentence. A person appointed from the rank of captain is not eligible for promotion of the rank of assistant chief by virtue of his or her appointment as assistant EMS director position. We believe that actually captures that because it has always been understood on this particular issue that the rank of the battalion chief shall be with all the rights and benefits of a battalion chief, the
I
benefits
see.
being the
So,
promotion.
in other words, this person who's appointed from the captain rank to assistant EMS director then could apply for competitive promotion to assistant chief?
Right, and this
And
is
has anybody ever
basically,
gone up that way before?
I don't know,
Mm-mm.
I don't know, but this is intended to maintain status quo on the old contract.
Okay. Anybody got a contract?
Yeah.
It does
Yeah,
not.
that's
though.
not status.
Yeah, that's not status quo.
That's basically creating an assistant chief's position, a battalion chief's position.
It does create a battalion chief position. It's on page 19.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
And if you look at the first sentence of the first paragraph, section 3 entitled Assistant EMS Director, and it's under Article 6 of Emergency Medical Service, it says effective August 1st, 1999, any vacancy occurring in the position of Assistant EMS Director shall be filled from the rank of captain and shall be a battalion chief with all the rights and benefits of a battalion chief.
They would deny.
Well,
the
what my
ability
guys are
to
telling me
take
is
the
that
test.
she did apply to take the assistant chief, the current incumbent did apply to take the assistant chief exam, and ultimately a decision was made that she was not allowed to do that?
Oh, I don't know about that.
Mhm.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that in caucus and they'll get me the,
Okay.
and then,
Well, I don't know what the decision was, but that, the old contract clearly, establishes that as a battalion chief position, just entitled Assistant EMS Director, and all the rights and benefits of a battalion chief goes along with it.
okay. And then you kept that $150 stipend.
Yes.
Now, we were, I think as I indicated, we're willing to grandfather the incumbent. We didn't want the incumbent to lose pay out of the deal, but what's your rationale for continuing to pay certification pay to that position at a higher rate than is paid to other EMS personnel?
I have to look back on my notes. I don't have that in my,
Okay.
I apologize.
That's fine. No, that's fine.
But I didn't recall what the rationale was to cut it. Do you have that?
Yeah, the rationale was we thought, I mean, everybody who gets paramedic certification pay ought to be paid the same.
Okay.
And we were kind of unclear as to how that got,
I think,
changed.
And I have to look at my notes, but I recall something about this position being in charge and above all of the other paramedic people who maintain the EMS or paramedic certifications, and so we would require, they have to maintain it and require them, to be the supervisors, basically. of
Supervisor
that.
pay on that?
Say that again?
I think there's supervisor pay involved in that. I'll have to double check.
There's not a supervisor. Okay, and then let's talk about section 5.
Okay. On section 5, commitment to staffing needs, also known as the moratorium, we've changed it to say, the parties understand and agree that the fire department must be able to adequately staff its ambulances at all times. We added as determined by the city and/or the fire chief, as we maintain that management right. If due to staffing shortages, increased operational needs, extreme conditions, or emergencies, the fire department cannot obtain adequate staffing, the fire chief can declare a moratorium at his or her discretion. That's again reflecting the management right that's added, that is reflected by the clarification in that first sentence. On the firefighter request made pursuant to sections 1B6 and 7 and 1C4 and 5. Such moratorium shall continue for a period necessary to meet staffing needs, but may not exceed, we have here may not exceed 4 years. We also say moratoriums can be declared back to back as needed and are not grievable. We upped the moratorium to 4 years because if, for instance, there was a staffing shortage or an operational need that required more staff to be hired, we needed the time to be able to have a couple of cadet classes come in, get trained, actually get in there. As you know, I think the average of the cadet being hired to being put into rotation as a for firefighter and EMS duties is, I think about 18 months. So we wanted to make sure that we covered that for at least a class or two. The reason we added moratoriums can be declared back to back as needed and are not grievable. Number one, if a condition exceeds 4 years, we need to be able to cover that bridge. As you know, the moratorium is only going to last during the period necessary to fix the problem. It's not intended to last forever. And then the non-grievable part is again due to the management rights that are retained by the city with regard to staffing, managing operational needs, and then the extreme conditions or emergencies have always been understood between the parties.
So the chief could, I mean, if the chief declared back-to-back moratoriums, the chief could declare a moratorium up to 8 years, and that would not be grievable?
Well,
I mean, even
it's
if
up
there
to
was-
8 years, yeah. If a staffing condition lasted for 8 years, then yes. But if the staffing condition only lasted 4.5, then it would be 4.5.
But the chief makes that decision in the chief's sole discretion, and it's not grievable?
Yeah.
So even if it only lasted 4.5, he could do it 8, and we wouldn't be allowed to grieve?
Possibly. I guess what I
I
was.
mean, there's
what
not
I was-
even a bad faith exception.
Yeah, and the intent here was to retain the management rights with regard to staffing, determining operational needs, et cetera. And the intent of the moratorium is to do it reasonably. So if you have any suggestions on that, I'd be
Yeah.
willing to hear.
Okay. I think I have an answer on that $150 stipend. I'm checking something real quick. I think the answer, Roxy, is that, you know, under the current contract, there's a supervisory paramedic certification pay of $150, and that y'all eliminated that from your proposals.
Oh, okay.
So when you did that and affected those three, we thought it was fair to affect the assistant EMS director. But if you look at page 19 of the contract, the last paragraph under section 3, supervisory paramedic pay is $150, and that had been eliminated, and so
Oh, okay.
they were gonna lose money on the deal, so we thought, you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Okay, I need to go, I can't recall that, so I need to look at that if that was inadvertently left out.
I think it may well have been.
I think that was, cause I don't, in the economic article 10, and what's the supplemental pay 11? Article 10 and 11 of our proposals, I think that if the supervisory EMS pay was not addressed there, so we didn't necessarily eliminate it, and I need to make sure, that may be inadvertent.
Okay. Okay. Well, that one can be fixed easily one way or
Yeah.
the other. Okay.
Yeah, we'll look back at that.
Okay. My understanding is that there was agreement at some point in the past And there was a memorandum of understanding between the parties about the assistant EMS director not being able to take the.
Oh, I'm not aware of that. If you
Emotional
have
exam.
any kind of information, please forward that.
I will.
Because that will absolutely, if, depending on what it says, that may change the position. I'm not aware of that at all. I haven't been made aware of it.
Okay. Well, y'all, I don't anticipate, I mean, we've got a lot of work to do on trying to come up with our counter for this. I don't anticipate being able to get back together
Okay.
today. Y'all may understand that as good news, who knows? Why don't, you know, we can't meet next week. Obviously, it's Thanksgiving and I already have, so it's a short week and I already have the days committed, but perhaps I'm looking at the following week and, the 2 days that I have available in the following week right now are December 3rd and 4th. And so I would, offer those to you and see if one of those will work.
Okay.
Okay?
Let's tentatively mark on our calendars those 2 days and
Okay.
so that I can work on getting that done. Will you, be on email on Monday so that I can, make sure my team is available and send
Yeah,
postings, et cetera?
yeah, I'm gonna tentatively mark them, and if they work, great.
Okay,
If only one of them works, let's grab that one.
okay. We will
Yeah, and the guys are
preferably
saying,
the 3rd?
yeah.
Okay.
But I've got them tentatively marked down both days right now.
Okay, and I offer if you have any kind of, information request, feel free to email me. I'll get them to you as soon
Okay.
as possible. I know
And I'll
that-
get you a copy of that MOU on the, I mean, that's not one that I think is gonna.
Just give me whatever information you have on that.
Okay.
We'll deal with that.
That's what the email is.
Well, anyway, okay. Okay, guys, very
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.